Emma doesn't like my purity test.
Emma doesn't like your purity test?
No.
Why? What's the debate here?
She thinks that I'm too hard on Elizabeth Warren.
You are too hard on Elizabeth Warren.
What are your thoughts
In
on
what
Elizabeth
perspective?
Warren?
I mean, I think Elizabeth Warren has been playing politics. I think Elizabeth Warren's very good on Wall Street and is playing a little bit more identity politics than needed at a moment when we need courageous leaders to step up.
Well,
stand for
my
things.
thing about Elizabeth Warren is if she's going to run for president, which I would
She's not.
I would 100% be for her.
She's not.
I want more than just screaming and ranting at a bank executive at a hearing. I want you to come forward during the Dakota Access Pipeline. I want you to come forward on droning all over the world, not just the financial.
But that's not what she's allowed to do. She's in a leadership position because she's cut a deal, most likely, to do what she's allowed to do and stay out of what she's not allowed to do. And step up at certain moments when they need a strong female progressive voice. I'm trying to...
Emma's had 2 wines. Let her rip.
I've had only 2 wines. How many? Okay, so the audience isn't going to like this, but my purity test for Democrats is, 1, do you take a majority of your donations from small donors? Elizabeth Warren does need that. 2, do you have a history of fighting against corporations and big banks? Yes, Elizabeth Warren does. 3, do you have a progressive policy background? Do you have a voting record that matches your rhetoric? Elizabeth Warren meets that. For Jordan, the fact that she didn't stand up on DAPL and that she didn't endorse Bernie Sanders disqualifies her from his
I never said
against
disqualified. Never said disqualified.
That means that one senator in the entire country meets that purity test. Not Sherrod Brown, not Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and that's where we diverge. She's not a senator, she's a representative. So that's the
We should have her on. She's good.
no, but
Laying down the law.
laying down the law. So that's where Jordan and I diverge. So Elizabeth Warren, who started the CFPB, the only semblance of accountability we had after the financial crash, and you know what? Bitch is going to be president in 2020.
Anne was meeting with Hillary Clinton's people in 2014. Just saying.
Can I reveal my purity test?
Somewhere I'm in the middle.
Okay, so my purity test is this. How quickly can you serve me wine
Or martini.
and or martinis?
And he's got wine from America.
And with what rate of frequency can you serve me that stuff? That's my only purity test.
So I'm a little bit in between Emma and Jordan on this because I think that a lot of this has to do with deals being cut at certain moments. There are some lawmakers. I'm going to give Ro Khanna a shout out right now.
California.
Congressman Ro Khanna. I looked into his financials a couple of months ago, and on my old show on Sirius XM Progress, I talked about him. He reached out to me to clarify. And then we interviewed him, and he clarified it. And then he kept reaching out to us. And I was like, listen, I don't agree with him on everything, but he's actually pivoted. There are people who actually used to be part of the, whatever, moderate, corporate, and then decide, I'm no longer taking corporate money. And then they step up. And they actually do it. Now, I'm still, on the fence about him, and we're pushing, and we're, delving, but he's actually stepping up and talking to us and open to discourse. Whereas Cory Booker is yesterday, after he lays out this progressive agenda, yesterday is nope, I'm 100% for charter schools. Even Hillary Clinton was against charter schools. Is that man ever going to be president?
I think he'd love to be. He'd love to be simultaneously president and, corporate motivational speaker / minister or something. So it's a little. I think what he aspires to be is a little creepy. I personally think Tulsi Gabbard is the correct model here, but for some reason she's seen as anathema to elements of the Democratic establishment simply because she not even extended an olive branch to Trump, but at least signaled her receptivity to working with Trump on discrete initiatives. And I think that is worthwhile because if Trump rebukes that request, you could use that as leverage against him, and you can't just be reflexively dismissed as somebody who is a knee-jerk Trump opponent.
I don't think that was a strategy, though. That's a multi-layered
It is multi-layered.
strategy.
I think it's multi-layered, and I think, and she's also, very Tulsi Gabbard is somebody who I relate to because she makes foreign policy issues
Yes.
that are non-negotiable for her.
And
And I think we need more of that because we can't just allow this to, this foreign policy, the consensus to just continue on as it's going because it's just such a disaster.
how much
so-
of the budget goes to defense?
I don't have the figure in front of me right now.
Wait, we're going back to Elizabeth Warren.
Okay.
But wait, one more thing. There are a
Jen
lot of
has
leaders
thoughts.
out there we don't know about that are at the state level. Martin Quezada in Arizona. There's a bunch. I can't think of them right now.
So I was moderating the Elizabeth Warren debate here while you guys were over there between Emma and Jordan. And my conclusion is Jordan is right that she's more political than people realize in the beginning. Jordan is right. Well, Jordan even didn't say this, so I'll say it, and hence I'll be right, that she miscalculated. I'm sure you agree. She thought Hillary was going to win like everybody else did and thought, I'll be a little political here, I'll be practical. But on the other hand, I largely agree with the substance of what Emma is saying, which is that that's too much to say she's not good enough, because then almost no one is good enough. And so we have to have allies. She's super strong against the banks. I think that if she had her druthers, she would get money out of politics right away. I hope, but I actually don't know 100%, which is also a little problematic, back to Jordan's point, right? And the main reason I think why is not because she was fooling anybody or trying to trick anybody. I think the main reason why is because she's now literally lived in Washington too long.
Yes.
Like everyone around her thinks she's the radical. So it's nearly impossible not to center yourself a little bit, right? And to cheat towards, well, okay, I mean, Hillary Clinton won the primary, so I'll endorse her, and yada, yada, yada.
Like in the WikiLeaks, the Hillary Clinton camp was the entire goalpost was, what does Elizabeth Warren think about X, Y, and Z? So she was the progressive goalpost for the entire movement for the Hillary Clinton camp, which means that's indicative of what the establishment thinks about the progressive movement. They think there's nothing further left than Elizabeth Warren. What do you say?
Well, no, they didn't care what Elizabeth Warren thought. They wanted her to. That was all about getting her endorsement.
I understand
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not about what she thinks. It's about
Yeah.
how far can we move left so that she appeases
Yeah.
us.
Well, this is a really, it's actually, I think, a nearly perfect conversation, if I might say so myself, about Elizabeth Warren, because I think Emma's right that she was considered the outer edge of the bounds of acceptable thinking, as Glenn Greenwald would say, right? And so if you went further than her, you were insane and radical, etc. But that then goes to Jordan's point, which is, even though she was the outer edge, she's within acceptable thinking in Washington, which then makes you pause and go, wait, why are they willing to accept her so much? Like, they don't fully accept her, which goes to Emma's point. But at the same time, she is so much more, like, going into the 2016 election, if she had run, they would not have considered it unacceptable for her to win, like they considered it unacceptable for Bernie to win.
Right.
So the establishment does know something about her that we don't, that they find her acceptable enough, which then leaves you kind of where we were, which is one of the best progressives out there. Definitely don't disqualify her or anything like that. At the same time, pause. It's just a note of concern.
Well,
That's all.
My bottom line is, if it's Elizabeth Warren versus Donald Trump or Ted Cruz or any of these, I will be knocking on doors for Elizabeth Warren. However, there comes a time where you have to understand when there's a moment, and Bernie Sanders was a moment. Probably the biggest progressive insurgency since Bobby Kennedy.
Henry Wallace.
I don't know if you'd agree.
Well, no, but Bobby Kennedy was like Elizabeth Warren. He was more accepted by the establishment.
Okay.
Since like Eugene McCarthy or
But in terms of
or
a
McGovern.
presidential candidate with that kind of popularity and electoral chance.
Henry Wallace. Because Henry Wallace
So-
was the DNC.
Elizabeth Warren, in that moment when she could have
Dirty.
whether Bernie would have won or not with her endorsement, who knows? Probably not. But she could have done the politically courageous thing, and that I think she showed that politics came before what was right.
Can I add to your point one, and then sorry, Jake, but
That's okay.
the one thing that I worry about with Elizabeth Warren is a similar thing with Barack Obama, a lack of political courage and a deference to the establishment. That's the one thing that I would agree with you on. She's more progressive than Obama. I don't even think that that's a question. But deference to those who know best in the Democratic establishment is concerning, and that's my last point. Jen.
And before Cenk takes credit, I hired Emma as my intern.
Okay, first of all, I take complete credit.
Yeah.
Okay, second of all, that's right, though. So we all agree she miscalculated in not supporting Bernie Sanders, and the fact that it was a calculation at all is disconcerting, right? Because, yeah, I get it. Like, I want you to be practical. Look, of course, I'm biased, but I think I'm the most practical man on earth.
The most practical man on earth.
Right. So I want to win. And that means you have to be practical. And I understand why she miscalculated, because everyone in the world, and especially her world, because it was now Washington, thought Hillary was going to win. And Elizabeth, you won't be there to have the progressive thought influence her. I get it, but she was wrong. She did calculate, and all these are legitimate concerns. So the question is she going to have the courage to do the right thing next time? So I'll end on this point, which is that she gets to screw up once. It was a big, big screw up. But that's okay. Like, nobody's perfect and yada yada. But she can't screw up twice, right? I don't mean like, hey, nitpicking, I don't agree with her on that policy. Nobody agrees on all policies. I mean on another giant situation, right? If she backs Cory Booker instead of whoever, right? That's then I'm done with it. Then you go, oh, okay, I guess that's who she was. So we'll see. That chapter's not written.
I have a question. Say there was some sort of deal cut. Do you think that there were some progressives who are almost conditioned into thinking that they were going to lose or be demoted if they didn't support Hillary Clinton, but in the end, it was the establishment who needs the progressives more. It's the Chuck Schumers who are pushing forward Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Barbara Lee and all these old-time liberal lawmakers who had all the power. It's like a Disney movie. You had all the power to begin with. No one needed to give you the power. But, I mean, do you think that it was almost like a game that was played in the reverse?
Yeah, and so they thought if I don't support Hillary Clinton, I won't have any power and yada yada, but turns out they don't have any power anyway, and they never had any voters, and they never had any support. So they keep saying like, oh, but she won, you guys are doing sour grapes. No, she won with more brand name recognition than any politician has ever had. She won with more on the ground, old political boss kind of entrenched Democratic support than anyone has ever had, and she still barely won. That's not something to write home about.
What was turnout?
She should have, if with the kind of advantages that she had, she should have won at a minimum 60-40, but really 70-30, especially against No, I'm even talking about the primaries, especially against an opponent that they laughed at in Bernie Sanders. They thought he was the single best possible opponent. I know guys in Washington who had a theory back then, not now, that they picked Bernie Sanders to run against. I'm not kidding. And so they're like, oh, good, clear the field and let us run against a kook. We can't ask for anything better, right? And then they picked Trump to run against. So they manufactured their own loss. Now, again, I don't know to what degree that's true, and certainly Bernie's not part of the game, right? But other people clearing the field, them thinking that Bernie's the right candidate, right? Hey, that's perfect, worked out perfectly. I would be shocked if they did not have that conversation at Clinton headquarters. How lucky can we get? It worked out perfectly. We're running against a socialist old guy from Vermont who has no chance of winning. We didn't get any real competition from another establishment figure like Biden or whatever.
It's
That was their point of view. They couldn't be more wrong about Sanders. They couldn't be more wrong about Trump. But mainly, they couldn't be more wrong about themselves. They were the problem.
It's interesting you say that about Biden, because I was on Draft Biden in 2015. Everyone I know that left Draft Biden didn't go to work for Hillary. They went to work for Bernie. And that was where their gauge was off.
So Biden's an interesting cat, right? I mean, as the vice president and the guy backing Tom Perez and all those guys, he's establishment. On the other hand, there is some truth to that whole mythology about regular Joe. He is a little bit of a regular Joe. He's sometimes a knucklehead, and he does get worked up, and he does care, right? He's not a total fraud. He's not a total fake. I've always kind of had a soft spot for Biden because you sense a little authenticity in his bungling.
U.S. Senate at age 31 or whatever.
First thing he proposed was campaign finance reform. Not saying it didn't change over time. First piece of legislation.
Warren, can I ask you one question?
But he just, yeah, definitely. But just real quick on Biden, he not only was but remained the poorest senator, number 100 among 100, poorest senator. I think he was even poorer than Bernie, and he did introduce campaign finance reform first. Actually, so did Al Gore. First thing Al Gore introduced when he was a congressman was campaign finance reform. And so both those guys, they are real progressives, and they are real people in a lot of sense. At the same time, of course, they're also establishment. They're both vice presidents, have a lot of friends, and have some of the similar groupthink. No matter how much I happen to like Gore and you happen to like Biden and yada yada.
So I asked because a lot of the viewers asked this question. I don't really know how to answer it. Do you think the Democratic establishment would have lost to Donald Trump, or would have rather lost to Donald Trump, who didn't allow them to change or didn't force them to change any of their old ways, than to lose to an actual progressive like Bernie Sanders?
Oh, that's not even a question. And I talk about this from time to time. It's if they lose to Trump, they all keep their jobs. If they lose to Bernie Sanders, they all get fired. So they definitely cared more about losing to Bernie Sanders than they did about losing to Trump. That's why they fight progressives harder than they ever fight Republicans. If Keith Ellison won the DNC chair, half the people in the room get fired. And that's everything to them. So that's why they'll smear him. They'll do dirty tactics. They'll do Karl Rove-like tactics, which they never do against Republicans. Because if they do it against Republicans, their donors might get pissed, and then they'll lose their jobs. So they'll fight Republicans by Queensberry rules. They'll keep their gloves on. When it's a progressive and it might be their job on the line, no rules at all. They will fight super fucking dirty. So the establishment Democrats fear us way more than they have ever feared any Republican. And to them, we're a real threat to their livelihood, their consultant fees, all the things that they get rich off of. Whereas Trump won, they all still have their jobs. They're fine. It affected you. It didn't affect them that much. Yes, they would have liked to have been Department of Transportation, Transportation Secretary or Labor Secretary or the Undersecretary. Everyone in Washington was angling for some sort of assistant to the Undersecretary job, right? They didn't get that, but they still work at Center for American Progress or this legislative office, etc. Where if Bernie won, they wouldn't have gotten any of those jobs.